I actually wanted to start with another question, but now that Steffi has raised the subject, could you, for all those who don't follow US politics as closely as you do, explain what that T-shirt is actually about?
Sure. This is there's a law in the U.S. that had allowed the sons and daughters of illegal immigrants to essentially stay in the U.S., to have jobs, et cetera. The Trump administration essentially threw that away. And there are hundreds of thousands of these folks who have lived their lives in the United States and have built their lives in the United States, and they are now under question based on kind of a budget impasse. You know, the U.S. is a nation of immigrants, and I think that we need to welcome these folks and to allow them to continue their lives. And to some extent, you know, we are all dreamers, so I'm hoping that that message comes through.
Are you going to wear that same T-shirt next Friday when Donald Trump is going to speak in Davos?
I'll be leaving before he gets there, which could be a good thing.
Dara, your nickname is the Anti-Travis, and I'm not sure it's a nickname you like.
No.
This talk is labeled The Next Chapter, but if you bear with me for a short time, I'd like to stick to the last chapter, which might still be the current chapter. Just to summarize that chapter, it's nearly as good as Fire and Fury. Before you took over as the new Uber CEO, there was basically one scandal on top of the other. Allegedly stolen trade secrets, hushed up sexual harassment allegations, data leaks, a ripoff of Uber drivers. The London mayor accused Uber of arrogance and breaking the rules, and Uber used rather beastly methods in regard to their competitors, that is, ordering thousands of Lyft rides and then canceling them, which really is rather nasty. And on top of that, a generally toxic and dysfunctional company culture, especially in regard to women and minorities. So I was wondering, while you were the CEO of Expedia and following the news also on Uber, did you ever think, oh, wow, that's a company I have to work for?
No. Listen, as the Expedia CEO, I during the good years, I did admire Uber for just the unbelievable growth that they had. But what you don't realize, and certainly now I realize being inside Uber, is that winning, and winning as Uber did, covers a lot of faults inside of the company. And those faults had been in the company and were increasing, but I think that sometimes winning excuses bad behavior, and that's just not how we're going to go forward as a company at Uber. I think that we are very much now focused on going from growth at all costs to responsible growth, growing with partners, going from doing whatever it takes to now one of our cultural norms is doing the right thing, period. It is a culture shift, but I think the good news is that the crisis that the company saw in 2017, and to some extent there's some of it rolling in 2018, the crisis was so great that when I came into the company, I didn't need to convince anyone that we needed to change.
Yeah.
The company knew that it had to change, and myself and some of the leaders that are coming into the company now have to show the company how to change. So we'll get there.
What was your first thought when you were offered the job?
No, thank you. Early on, you know, it was not something that I was looking to take, and I was really happy with the job that I was in. And then I actually had drinks with Daniel Ek, who's the CEO of Spotify, and he's terrific, and he had recommended me to a person who had asked about the job, and I said, you know, God, I'd never do that. He said, why? And I said, because I'm doing great, I'm comfortable, I love my job. And Daniel said, Dara, life isn't about being comfortable, it's about doing something great. And this is a great company that needs change. I think you should talk to them. So the next day I talked to them, and one thing led to the other. And for me, the advice that I give young people about their careers is to go to a place where you can make a difference as an individual, and go to a place that's making a difference in the world. And to me, that's a definition of the opportunity that I was giving. I can really make a difference at a company, Uber, that I believe is going to be an important company for the world, and a company that's going to make the world a better place.
There are a lot of people here in the audience who work for large companies, huge companies, and we all know how difficult it is to actually change company culture.
Yeah.
Especially if the company grew from, I think, 200 employees to more than 15,000 in no time at all. I'm wondering, for a West Coast or general startup that needs to grow to scale very fast, is it actually possible to be successful without bending the rules, without bending ethical limits?
I think that there's a certain amount, any innovator is going to be disrupting past practices, whether they're rules or ways of doing business or accepted norms. So there is a rebel in every startup. I just think that Uber took it too far. You know, I think that when you look at, especially as it relates to laws and regulations, et cetera, I think there was a bit of a pirate mentality. And in some ways, you do have to push the boundaries, but pushing the boundaries doesn't mean overstepping the boundaries. And I think that we are of a size and scale and scope at this point, and fundamentally bringing low-cost, affordable transport and creating opportunity for millions of drivers who use our app. Fundamentally, that's something that makes sense for society, makes sense for cities, it makes sense for countries. And I think that with dialogue and with partnership, it might take a little longer, but with dialogue and partnership, fundamentally, this is a service that fits in with a new digital economy. So
how do you sort of, in a concrete way, change the Uber company culture? You can't have 101s with 15,000 people.
No, you can't, but the company, you know, never, there's a saying of never let such an issue go to waste here. The company knew that it was in such trouble that I think the company was thirsting for leadership and wanted change. This is not a company that was resisting change. This is a company that knew it had to change. So when I came there, we actually did something really interesting, which is we crowdsourced the cultural norms that we have with the company. I didn't want the culture of the company to be top-down, because then it's a bunch of people in an office deciding what they want and pushing their agenda on the company. So we actually went to all of our employees and we said, what's a culture that you think that the company should stand for? They all voted. The management team got together, and we were the editors. We were not the writers. We did editorialize what came up from the company, but essentially we crowdsourced what is now what we call the cultural norms of the company, and we call them norms because they're not about these values that you put on a wall and people write and they think they're so pretty and do nothing about. Norms are about behaviors. And that was one of the first things that we did, which is establish...
Could you name one norm? Or
one norm is we do the right thing, period. And that's it. It's pretty simple. We were thinking about what it means, but everyone knows what that means. And I'd say that's the one that I hear repeated again and again in the hallways and in meetings about what decisions should we make.
Apart from changing corporate culture, you actually have a business to run. So how is Uber doing at the moment, business-wise?
Business is actually surprisingly good for everything that the company went through. This is, I have to give the company and prior management credit in that they put together an execution machine. And a strength of Uber's was the fact that it is so local and is everywhere in the world, where the local teams have very strong entrepreneurial control over what they do. So while the headquarters in San Francisco has been deeply affected by all these issues, these are employees who, when they see the news, they take it personally because they're on a mission. The employees who are in the field, in the cities, et cetera, they're just getting their job done. So the growth rates of the company are still extraordinary. There's a new business called Uber Eats, which is in food delivery, which is absolutely exploding. I think we'll be the largest food delivery company in the world this year. And we continue to invest in innovative new features such as bringing the freight business digital and also vertical takeoff and landing, call it Uber copters or flying cars, which is pretty cool as well.
Actually, in Germany, you can call it Über den Wolken, which is a great song you must at some point learn. It's
I'll have to put that on my Spotify list.
Above the clouds. Germany is a highly regulated market. Sorry, I was wondering, because you said business is going extremely well, whether any part of your business isn't going that well.
Oh, sure. The part of the business that's not going well is the profitability part. We have some details to work out there. That'll come with time.
Okay. In what time, or is that the question not to ask, never to ask?
It'll come. The business has. This is a business that has been tuned for growth and has not been necessarily tuned for efficiency. And part of the muscles that we have to learn as a company is actually, as you become more efficient, the customer experience improves. And as you become more efficient, you can take some of the profits from that efficiency and put it back into marketing or put it back into growth. And it's just training. It's just a different muscle that the company has to put together, and we'll get there. We'll get there.
Germany as a market. I remember talking to colleagues at Waze in the Valley who always, I don't know, roll their eyes saying, well, the Germans, they don't want to share. They have so many cars, but they just don't want to share their data. And also people at Facebook say Germany, very different, very specific market. How's your view on Germany as a market for Uber?
Well, Germany as a market for Uber is a market with enormous promise that hasn't been
nice
realized.
Way of putting it.
You know, listen, it hasn't been realized. You look at the German economy, you look at how important transportation is part of the German economy. Transportation, cars are part of the culture. But the fact is that we stepped into Germany and we behaved in a manner that was inappropriate and was wrong. So our German strategy is a total reset. And it deserves to have a total reset. We're now working with regulators, with cities, et cetera, to build up a business the right way. It's going to take a bit longer than some of the other markets, but the German market is worth the investment. And we want to partner with the manufacturers, we want to partner with the cities, we want to partner with taxi companies, some of whom are out there. But if we do it the right way, the German economy is certainly worth the investment.
I have to own up to sort of a personal bias. As you know, I'm from Berlin and not from Munich. I never had a bad experience with taxi drivers here in Munich. So I do understand. I drove with one this morning who said that on 22nd of February, the new Uber boss was going to come to Munich, and I told him, no, it's January actually. It's today, so I guess he's out there now too. But coming from Berlin, I welcomed Uber to disrupt the market because I've been shouted at and abused verbally for, I'd say, the last 2 years, at least a dozen times, for wanting to pay with my credit card. And anybody here who's not from Berlin, it's actually by law that Berlin taxi drivers have to accept credit cards. So if they pick you up at the airport and then want to drive you to a cash machine, you don't have to do that. You can insist on paying on a credit card. Sorry, that was just my personal vendetta against being driven to a cash machine myself quite a lot of times before I found out that they changed the law. So is Germany an over-regulated market?
I wouldn't say over-regulated, but there's certainly some regulations that don't make sense in the next decade. You know, one example is there are these return to garage regulations where if a taxi takes someone somewhere, they've got to actually go back to their garage without anyone in the car. That makes no sense for the environment. That makes no sense for traffic. That makes no sense for congestion as well. So we have to, I think, work with regulators to convince them and also listen to them about what are the changes that we can make together as partners so that you achieve what you want to achieve, which is you want to have transport available to as many people, you want it to be low cost, you want it to be high quality, and you want it to reduce congestion in cities and for it to be environmentally friendly. So for example, where London, where we have our issues, we have committed to having a hybrid or electric fleet in London over a period of time, if they'll let us back in, which I hope that they will. Those are the kind of partnerships that we want to build, not just in London, but in Germany as well. And I do think that there are some regulations that should be changed. There are regulations of the past that don't make any sense in the future, but we have to be humble in our approach, and it's got to be a dialogue.
What's the next German city you're going to conquer?
First of all, I would never use conquer. So I guess no city.
And
but
secondly, it's going to be Hamburg or Frankfurt or Cologne?
We do plan to launch in more cities.
This year?
Yes, this year. Yeah, this year. We're bullish on the German market, but we want to be patient. The last time around, we tried to go too fast. We were guilty of being too proud. And this time around, we want to make sure we get it right. We want to make sure that we're working in the right with regulators. Once we get it right, we'll look to scale the business. So I do anticipate more cities in Germany, but we have to learn our lessons from the past. So I'm optimistic, but it's going to take some time.
When you talk to German regulators, would you wish for a system, maybe EU system actually from Brussels, helping you to just have one standard to comply with and not talk to loads of various European governments one by one?
I think that a single standard would be ideal for companies like ours, platform companies who are operating across borders. But the fact is, that's not going to happen for a while. So we are engaged on the ground with transport authorities, country to country, city to city, and I think for the foreseeable future, that's the rule set. That's how we're going to operate. It's not particularly efficient, but it's life, and we'll deal with it, and we think we can grow within those confines.
I read that Uber at this stage actually doesn't need a CEO, but a miracle. So I was wondering, given all your experience, how's your track record on miracles, or would you disagree?
I'm a wonderful magician. You know, I actually think that there's in Silicon Valley, there's just this cult of personality, the single person who's going to solve everything, and I think that's BS. You know, for me, what excites me is it's about building great teams. And I think this part of the culture that has to change at Uber is it's this founder-led, this person who knows all. And to me, what Uber needs is a team. You know, we didn't have a chief operating officer. We didn't have a CFO. So for me, I have to bring in a team who complements the folks already there, the CTO, the chief product officer, et cetera. And together as a team, we can succeed. It's not about me. If Uber is about me, we're in trouble. We've got to bring together a group of folks who disagree, align, and then go.
We just spoke about the regulated market, and you mentioned the Uber den Wolken, the air taxi, drone taxi earlier on. Given that some people even say Germany and Europe have a problem with new technologies, with embracing revolutionary digital systems, do you actually think that in your lifetime you'll see people flying around Munich and Berlin?
I can't speak for Munich, but we're going to see people flying around Dallas, Texas. You know, and I think that's going to happen sooner than you think. I think it's going to happen within the next 10 years.
And is Germany losing out for not being sort of more embracing regarding that change?
I think that there's a potential of Germany missing out, right? And I don't know enough about Germany, and I don't know enough about how Germany plans to change, but the pace of technological change is unmistakably accelerating. So I think that how governments and regulators respond to that is going to be difficult because there's a fundamental mismatch, right? Regulation happens by consensus. It happens slowly. It happens by bringing all kinds of interests and parties together, while at the same time, the pace of technology just goes and goes and goes and goes, and it's not waiting for anybody. And so those two forces are at fundamental conflict. How we resolve that, I don't know, but I do know that with the congestion that cities universally are experiencing, with all of our interests as it relates to the environment and the electrification of our transport grid, and also with technologies that allow us to share rides rather than a person having to own their own car or share a vertical car. All of those are technologies that we're enabling. I think they are fundamentally good for the world, and we will find our partners. I'm hoping we can find partners in Germany, but I can't control that.
The taxi drivers outside won't necessarily say that it's all good for the world because they see not just their businesses, but their existence under threat. Can you actually make a living out of being an Uber driver solely?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you can make a great living out of being Uber drivers. And I think one of the misconceptions about Uber, or one of the features of the business that we have to show more, is that as you bring prices down for transportation in general, demand increases very significantly. And as demand increases, utilization goes up. So the taxi drivers will be sitting around in their car less. They'll be on the road more. They may make less money per mile, but they can make just as much money after a full day's work. Bringing utilization up is magical. If you combine that with more than one person in the car, the idea of pooling, 2 or 3 people in a car, then you get a situation where you can radically drop transportation costs and hopefully become an alternative to car ownership.
Now, not just being a transportation platform anymore, but actually a transport company, you have to think about stuff like workers' rights. So I think you introduced benefits for London Uber drivers.
Yes.
A new technology that enables them to sort of catch their last ride, which will bring them closer to their home, and other benefits. What else changes when you move from being a platform to actually being a company that transports people?
Well, I think fundamentally we do want to be a platform, and one of the benefits of being a platform, and whenever I talk with our drivers who use the platform, the #1 reason why they use our platform is freedom. They say, I can work whenever I want, I can go and pick up my daughter in school, and I can do a couple of Eats trips, and then I come to Seattle, this was a driver, and then I drive for UberX, et cetera. So that is that #1, giving drivers the freedom to do what they want, whenever they want, I think is a magic that we never want to lose. That said, there's a population of drivers who drives a lot for us, essentially full-time. It's their full-time, right? But they will be driving 40+ hours or more a week for us. And we do need to, as a company, as we mature, think about what our responsibility is and see if there are benefits that we can bring the drivers who are using our platform. Can we help them in education? Can we help them in training? Can we help them think about retirement, et cetera? They will technically always, we never want to get in a situation where we're telling you what to do, because the power is we're just going to give you tools, do whatever you want. But I do think there's another level of responsibility that as a company we're thinking hard about.
Just to bring the audience back on this, who actually has an Uber app on their iPhones or other phones?
All right, pretty good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience? Here we go.
One second.
Just 1 second. Just 1 second. Wait for the mic.
You represent immigrants in the U.S., and I think you're showing the impact that immigrants can have on the economy and business. So thank you for that, as an immigrant myself in the U.S. But assuming that Uber is still a major technology player in the autonomous vehicle space, what else is left to do to get to where autonomous vehicles or self-driving cars are ubiquitous?
Oh, there's a ton left to do. I mean, road from now to full autonomous is going to take a significant amount of work. If you think about it, we, for example, map every single city in which we have to operate to 3 centimeters. We have to be building a full 3-dimensional map of every single city that we operate in. That takes a huge amount of effort and data as well. The sensor technology has to come down in price very significantly. I think it's going to be you're going to get semi-autonomous driving, and I think we will be able to feather in autonomous vehicles into our fleet. But to get to full autonomy, I think you're talking 10 to 15 years.
Will you be partnering with car companies on a bigger extent than you're doing it now?
Absolutely. Our business is a network business. We are investing in autonomy because we believe in it, and we want to help develop autonomy. But ultimately, we will work with anyone who wants to plug into our network, whether they're using our technology or their own technology.
Okay. Any company names?
Well, we have a partnership with Daimler.
Yeah.
We have a partnership with Volvo. We announced a partnership with Toyota, and there's some other announcements coming as well.
Okay. More questions? There's one back there, and then second row there.
Hi, my name is Joseph. I'm from Anti-Gravity Industries. I'm a huge fan of Uber, and I'm sure a lot of us are. And when I see you guys experiencing the criticism you face, I feel like most of it is warranted. But I also see a little bit of a crowd anger mentality. Do you experience that as well? And if so, can you name some examples where you guys feel you've been scapegoated?
I think that since most of it is warranted, it will be a waste of time. The fact is that the public has spoken, and they don't like what they saw. There's a lot of good in Uber. And there's this drama. There's kind of the public likes black and white and doesn't want to understand the nuances of gray. But the fact is that when you come to Uber and you meet the employees there, it is the most passionate set of employees who truly, truly want to change the world. Things went wrong, but these are good, passionate people whose head is in the right space. That said, for me to convince folks of that is not particularly interesting. What I can do is I can turn the chapter and I can talk about what we're going to be, which is this is a company that is going to grow and grow responsibly. This is a company that's going to do the right thing. And this is going to be, I hope, one of the greatest comebacks in technology. That's my job. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rodrigo from Expon Capital. You had an experiment, I believe, in Boston about data science. You're collecting so much data about traffic. So what have you learned so far? And what are you working on in terms of congestion, planning of cities, future of work, people working at home or different locations, we see WeWork coming in, et cetera?
Sure. So we are just getting started in our data science partnerships with cities. And the point is that we are going to, we were previously worried about privacy concerns, essentially protecting private data. But we can, on an amalgamated basis, share traffic information and data with cities in order to help cities resolve traffic situations. We're very, very early on that road. So I hope to get a lot more done there.
I think we have time for one last question.
I'm Peter Young. We do angel and early stage investment in China for the last 2 or 3 years. We're running more often into your competitors there with Didi and others. How do you relate yourself to them?
Well, listen, we are a very significant investor in Didi. For folks who don't know, Didi is, I guess you call them the Uber of China. They're a very significant competitor. And we were in China. It's a little hard for Western internet companies to compete in China. I don't know if folks know about that. So we sold our stake and now are an investor in Didi, and we compete with them. They've launched services in Mexico and in many other countries. So to some extent, we're cooperators, which is we compete at the same time, yet we're investors. And I think the bigger point is that the opportunity in ride sharing is so big. We now are less than 1% of driver hours on the road. Many estimates say that in 15 to 20 years, it's going to be 20%. So the road between now and then, I think, is going to offer a lot of winners, and I'm hoping we'll be one of them, and Didi will be one of them as well.
Last question from me to the audience. Who hasn't put up his or her hand earlier, who does not have an Uber app yet on their smartphone, will get one after this talk? OK, see one hand up. Who gets Lyft? Sorry? Question here? Yeah, 1, 2, 3. OK, overall, I think still some work to do. But thank you very much, Dara Khosrowshahi, for being here.